You were never suitable for our family. A barren African woman trying to infiltrate our bloodline. Those were the last words Zainab heard before signing her divorce papers. Her billionaire Korean husband sat across from her, relief flooding his face as she set him free. What he didn't know, she was 2 months pregnant. What he would discover 3 years later, that child was the only biological heir he would ever have. Because the fertility problem was never hers. It was his. And by the time the truth came out, she had built a $50 million empire and didn't need him anymore. Hey besties, before we dive into this beautiful story, tell me where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe and like so I can share more heart-stopping stories with you tomorrow. It is your beautiful way of supporting us. Thank you all. Love you guys. Now let's begin. The conference room on the 14th floor of Seoul Family Court was silent except for the scratch of pen against paper. Zainab Adeyemi's hand trembled as she signed her name on the final page of the divorce decree, her elegant signature a stark contrast to the cold legal language that declared her marriage dead. Across the mahogany table, Kang Min-sik sat with his eyes fixed on his phone screen, scrolling through stock reports as if his wife of 3 years was merely another business transaction to be finalized and forgotten. His mother, Mrs. Kang Sun-young, sat beside him in a cream Chanel suit, her thin lips curved into a smile of satisfaction. The older woman's diamond rings caught the afternoon light as she folded her hands on the table, watching Zainab with the cold assessment of someone who had just won a war. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Kang, Ms. Adeyemi, you understand that by signing these papers, you relinquish all claims to marital assets, including the penthouse in Gangnam, the vacation property in Jeju, and any stake in Kang Pharmaceuticals. You will receive the agreed-upon settlement of 200 million won and must vacate the marital residence within 72 hours. Zainab nodded, not trusting her voice. 200 million won. Roughly $160,000. For 3 years of her life, for the dreams she had sacrificed, for enduring the endless humiliation from his family. It was an insult disguised as generosity. And you acknowledge, the lawyer continued, reading from the document, that the primary grounds for divorce are your documented infertility and failure to produce an heir to the Kang family line, as required by the prenuptial agreement clause regarding family succession. The word Barren wasn't in the legal document, but it hung in the air anyway. Zainab felt it like a brand on her skin. She had heard it whispered behind her back at family gatherings, seen it in the pitying looks from Min-sik's relatives, felt it in the growing distance between her husband's body and hers in their marital bed. I acknowledge it, she said softly, her Nigerian accent still present despite 3 years in Korea. For the first time since entering the room, Min-sik looked up. His eyes met hers for exactly 2 seconds, and in that brief moment, Zainab saw not love, not even regret, but relief. Pure, undisguised relief that he was finally free of her. Good, Mrs. Kang said, speaking for the first time. Now you can return to your country and find a more suitable life. Perhaps African men have lower standards. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Min-sik's eyes had already returned to his phone. Zainab stood, gathering her purse with steady hands despite the rage and heartbreak churning in her chest. She wore a simple black dress, her natural hair pulled back in a low bun, her only jewelry a pair of gold earrings her grandmother had given her. She had dressed for a funeral, she realized. The death of the naive girl who had believed that love could conquer prejudice and cultural barriers. Goodbye, Min-sik, she said, her voice stronger now. He didn't respond. His mother smiled wider. As Zainab walked toward the door, she felt it, the slight flutter low in her abdomen. 8 weeks along, the doctor had confirmed yesterday. A miracle, the physician had called it, given her supposedly damaged reproductive system. Zainab placed one hand briefly, protectively, over her still flat stomach. She had come to this meeting knowing she was pregnant with Min-sik's child. She had made the deliberate choice to say nothing, to sign the papers, to let him believe he was rid of her. Some truths, she had decided, were better revealed when they could cause the maximum impact. And right now, she needed to disappear. She needed to protect her child from these people who measured human worth in bloodlines and bank accounts. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Zainab Adeyemi walked out of the Seoul family court carrying the only heir to the Kang pharmaceutical empire in her womb. 3.5 years earlier, Zainab had been standing in the Seoul International Convention Center, wearing professional translation headphones and a navy blue suit that made her feel sophisticated and powerful. The Seoul International Book Fair was in full swing, and she was working as the lead simultaneous translator for the keynote address on global healthcare innovation. She had moved to Seoul 18 months prior, drawn by a competitive fellowship for African translators to work in Asian markets. Her command of English, Korean, Yoruba, and French had made her invaluable in a city increasingly focused on African business expansion. At 28, she was one of the youngest senior translators at the prestigious Hangul global firm. The keynote speaker that day was Kang Min-sik, the 34-year-old CEO who had transformed his family's mid-size pharmaceutical company into a major player in Asian markets. He was scheduled to speak about breaking barriers in international medical access, and Zainab had spent a week preparing, learning the technical terminology, studying his previous speeches. What she hadn't prepared for was the incompetence of the Korean to English translator hired for the live broadcast. 3 minutes into Min-sik's speech, the translator made a catastrophic error, mistranslating Min-sik's statement about reducing drug costs as reducing drug quality. Zainab watched in horror as the English-speaking journalists began typing furiously, preparing to report a scandal that didn't exist. She made a split-second decision that would change her life. She stood up from her seat in the translator's booth, removed her headphones, and walked directly onto the stage in front of 3,000 attendees. "Excuse me," she said in perfect Korean, her voice projected through the hall's microphone system. "There has been a translation error. Mr. Kong said reducing costs, not reducing quality. This is an important distinction." The room fell silent. Min-sik turned to look at her, surprise evident on his handsome face. Zainab felt her heart pound as she realized what she had just done, interrupted a major CEO's keynote address in front of international media. But Min-sik smiled. Not a polite, corporate smile, but a genuine expression of relief and appreciation. "Thank you," he said in Korean. "Would you be willing to continue the translation for the remainder of my speech? It seems accuracy matters more than protocol." Zainab had nodded, and for the next 40 minutes, she stood on that stage, translating his words with precision and passion, unconsciously adding small gestures that enhanced the meaning, her natural charisma making the translation itself engaging. When the speech ended, the applause was thunderous. Backstage, Min-sik had approached her directly. "You saved me from an international scandal," he said, handing her a glass of champagne before she could refuse. "That mistranslation would have wiped billions off our stock value." "I was just doing my job," Zainab replied, trying to maintain professional distance despite being acutely aware of how attractive he was up close. Tall for a Korean man, with sharp features, intelligent eyes, and an easy confidence that came from a lifetime of privilege. "Your job was to sit in the booth," he pointed out. "What you did was brave. And brilliant." He paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her skin warm. "I've never met anyone quite like you." That was how it began. With champagne and compliments and the intoxicating feeling of being truly seen by someone who seemed to exist in a different stratosphere. Min-sik pursued her with the same focused determination he applied to business acquisitions. Flowers delivered to her office. Invitations to exclusive restaurants where he had reserved private rooms. Late-night conversations where he asked about her childhood in Lagos, her university years in London, her dreams of building bridges between African and Asian cultures through language. "You see the world differently than anyone I know," he told her one evening as they walked along the Han River, the Seoul skyline glittering behind them. "Everyone in my life wants something from me. Money, connections, status. You just want to talk about Yoruba proverbs and how Korean honorifics compare to Nigerian tribal hierarchies. Is that boring?" Zainab had asked, suddenly self-conscious. "It's fascinating," Min-sik replied. "You're fascinating." 6 months later, They married in a small private ceremony. Minsik had wanted to wait, to gradually introduce her to his family, to prepare them for his choice of a non-Korean bride. But Zainab was on a visa that was expiring, and he had insisted they couldn't let bureaucracy separate them. "I'll handle my mother," he had promised. "She'll come around when she sees how happy you make me." Mrs. Kang did not come around. The first time Zainab met her mother-in-law, the older woman had looked at her for a long, cold moment before speaking in Korean, as if Zainab couldn't understand. "So this is the African girl who trapped my son." "Mother," Minsik had said sharply. "Zainab is my wife. You will treat her with respect." "Respect must be earned," Mrs. Kang replied, switching to English with a thick accent. "You want respect? Give my son a grandson. Give our family an heir. Then we talk about respect." That conversation, Zainab would later realize, had set the template for everything that followed. She wasn't a person to Mrs. Kang. She was a function, a vessel that was supposed to produce the next generation of Kang bloodline. And when month after month passed without pregnancy, she became a failure. The first year of marriage, Minsik had been supportive. "These things take time," he said when Zainab expressed worry. "We're young. There's no rush." But his mother's pressure was relentless. Family dinners became interrogations. "Are you eating properly? African food might not be suitable for conception. You should eat more Korean food, seaweed soup, ginseng." Then later, more pointed. "Have you seen a fertility doctor? Perhaps there's something wrong. Perhaps your African genes are incompatible with Korean genetics." By the second year, Minsik started suggesting medical consultations. "Just to make sure everything is okay," he said. "It would give us peace of mind." Zainab agreed, wanting to quiet the growing whispers at family gatherings. The tests were invasive, humiliating. Blood work, ultrasounds, procedures with cold instruments and colder medical terminology. And then came the diagnosis that would ultimately destroy her marriage. Dr. Park, a fertility specialist at Seoul's most prestigious women's hospital, had delivered the news with clinical detachment. "Mrs. Kang, your fallopian tubes show significant scarring, likely from a previous pelvic infection. This makes natural conception extremely difficult, perhaps impossible. We estimate your chances of natural pregnancy at less than 5%. Zainab had sat in stunned silence. She had never had a pelvic infection. She had been careful, responsible with her health. But Dr. Park showed her the ultrasound images, pointing to shadows that supposedly indicated damage, using technical terms that overwhelmed her. "There are options," the doctor continued. "IVF, surrogacy, adoption." But when Zainab brought these options to Minsik, she saw something change in his eyes. It was subtle, a slight withdrawal, a new distance. "Let me think about it," he said. He never brought it up again. Instead, he started working later hours. Business trips became more frequent. His mother's comments at family gatherings became more pointed, no longer whispered but stated openly. "It's such a shame. Minsik would have been a wonderful father. But I suppose some women are not meant for motherhood." The final betrayal came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Zainab had prepared Minsik's favorite dinner, a fusion of Korean bulgogi and Nigerian jollof rice, a dish that symbolized their union. She had news to share, a new contract with a Chinese firm that would triple her income. She wanted to show him she could contribute financially, if not biologically, to their family legacy. She had been setting the table when she heard voices from Minsik's study. The door was slightly ajar, and she recognized his mother's sharp tone. "You've wasted 3 years on this woman," Mrs. Kang was saying. 3 years that you could have spent building a real family with someone suitable. Yuna is still waiting, you know. The Han family would merge with ours. Their daughter is young, fertile, and most importantly, Korean." Zainab froze in the hallway, a plate of meat balanced in her hands. "Mother, I'm married," Minsik said, but his voice lacked conviction. "To a barren African woman who will never give you children," his mother snapped. "Divorce her. The prenuptial agreement has a clause about failure to produce heirs. Our lawyers confirmed it. You have legal grounds. Stop being sentimental and think about your duty to this family, to your father's legacy." There was a long pause. Zainab held her breath, waiting for Minsik to defend her, to tell his mother that marriage was about more than producing heirs. Instead, he sighed. You're right. I should have married Yuna from the start. This was a mistake born from rebellion, not reason. I'll speak to the lawyers tomorrow. The plate slipped from Zainab's hands and shattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the penthouse like a gunshot. Minsik appeared in the doorway, his face pale, but he didn't apologize. He didn't take back his words. He just looked at her with a mixture of guilt and resignation. Zainab, he started. Don't, she said quietly. Just don't. She had walked to their bedroom that night, locked the door, and made a decision. She would not fight for a man who saw her as a mistake. She would not beg to remain in a family that saw her as defective. She would sign whatever papers they put in front of her, and she would leave with her dignity intact. What she didn't know then was that she was already pregnant. She would discover it 3 weeks later, after the divorce proceedings had begun, after moving into a small hotel room while she arranged her return to Nigeria. The morning sickness had started suddenly, and the pregnancy test had shown 2 pink lines that seemed impossible given Dr. Park's diagnosis. A different doctor, a Nigerian physician practicing in Idiwan, had confirmed it with a blood test. You're about 5 weeks along, Dr. Okafor had said with a warm smile. Congratulations. But I was told I couldn't get pregnant naturally, Zainab had whispered. They said my fallopian tubes were too damaged. Dr. Okafor had frowned and requested her medical records from Dr. Park's office. After reviewing them, she had looked troubled. Mrs. Kang, I don't see evidence of significant scarring in these ultrasounds. Certainly nothing that would make pregnancy impossible. May I ask who interpreted these results for you? Dr. Park at Seoul Women's Hospital. I see. Dr. Okafor's expression had darkened. I've heard troubling things about that clinic. They have close ties to several wealthy families, and there have been allegations of providing convenient diagnoses when families want reasons to dissolve marriages. I cannot prove anything, but I can tell you with certainty that you are pregnant and your reproductive system appears healthy. Zainab had felt the world tilt beneath her. She had been lied to. The diagnosis that had destroyed her marriage, that had made her believe she was broken, had been fabricated. But why? Then it clicked into place with sickening clarity. Mrs. Kang had connections everywhere in Seoul's elite circles. She could have easily arranged for a friendly doctor to provide a diagnosis that would give Minsik legal grounds for divorce while making Zainab feel too ashamed to fight back. Rage and grief had warred within her, but ultimately, a cold determination had won. She would not tell Minsik about the pregnancy. She would not give his family the opportunity to take her child or to use the baby as leverage. She would disappear, raise her child in peace, and let Kang Minsik live with his choices. 3 years had passed since that day in family court. 3 years during which Zainab had rebuilt her life from the ground up in Lagos, Nigeria. She had used her divorce settlement as seed money to launch Adeyemi Global Consulting, a firm specializing in Asian African business relations and translation services. The timing had been perfect. Chinese and Korean companies were expanding aggressively into African markets, and they needed cultural consultants who understood both worlds. Zainab had leveraged every connection she had made in Seoul, every skill she had acquired, and the business had exploded. Within 2 years, HEC was worth $50 million, with offices in Lagos, Nairobi, and Accra. She had become the go-to consultant for any Asian company serious about African expansion. But her greatest achievement wasn't her business success. It was Ayamide, her son, who had just turned 3. The boy was extraordinary, a perfect blend of his parents. He had Minsik's sharp, intelligent features, his high cheekbones and expressive eyes. But his skin was the warm brown of Zainab's father, and his personality was pure joy. Ayamide, my joy has arrived. She had named him perfectly. The child was already fluent in 3 languages, Yoruba, English, and Korean. Zainab had made a decision early on to teach him his father's language, not out of any hope for reconciliation, but because it was half of his heritage. She would not erase that from him, even if Minsik had erased her from his life. Yama, Ayamide called from his bedroom in their Victoria Island home. Can we go to the beach today? Maybe tomorrow, baby, Zainab called back, reviewing the contract proposal on her laptop. Yama has a big meeting to prepare for. The meeting that would change everything. After 3 years of deliberately avoiding any business involving Kang Pharmaceuticals, fate had delivered an opportunity too significant to refuse. A consortium of West African nations was seeking a Korean pharmaceutical partner for a $200 million vaccine distribution program. The contract was massive, career-defining, and the only Korean company with the manufacturing capacity and regulatory approvals to deliver was Kang Pharmaceuticals. Zainab's business partner, Adebayo, had been hesitant. "Are you sure about this?" he had asked when the opportunity arose. "You know who runs that company." "I'm sure," Zainab had replied with more confidence than she felt. "This contract is too important. It will save thousands of lives and establish AGC as the premier firm in this space. My personal history can't interfere with that." What she didn't say was that a small, vengeful part of her wanted Min-sik to see what she had become. She wanted him to see that the woman he had discarded as worthless had built something remarkable. And perhaps a deeper, more complicated part of her wanted him to meet Iamide, to see the child he would never have with anyone else. Because Zainab had been following news about Kang Pharmaceuticals over the years. She knew that Min-sik had married Yunahan 18 months after their divorce, exactly as his mother had planned. She knew that the marriage had been celebrated as a merger of 2 pharmaceutical dynasties. And she knew, from a carefully worded article in a Korean business journal, that the couple remained childless despite 2 years of marriage. The negotiations required her physical presence in Seoul. Video conferences wouldn't suffice for a contract this size. The consortium wanted face-to-face meetings, factory tours, detailed presentations. Zainab would need to spend at least 2 weeks in Korea. She had considered leaving Iamide in Lagos with her parents, but her son had never been separated from her for more than a day. And truthfully, she wasn't ready to leave him. So she made a decision that was perhaps reckless, perhaps fate. She would bring Iamide with her to Seoul. "We're going on an airplane," she told him the night before their departure. "To the country where Yama used to live." "Will we see Appa there?" Iamide asked innocently. The question pierced her heart. She had told Iamide age-appropriate truths about his father. That he was Korean, that he was a businessman, that circumstances had separated them before Iamide was born. She had never spoken ill of Min-sik to their son, but she had also never told him his father's name. "Maybe," she said carefully. "Would you like that?" Iamide considered this seriously. "I want to see if I look like him. Grandpa says I have a Korean face." "You do," Zainab agreed, kissing his forehead. "You have the best of both worlds, my love." Incheon International Airport was exactly as Zainab remembered it. Gleaming, efficient, filled with the sounds of multiple languages blending together. She moved through customs with Iamide's small hand in hers, her son wide-eyed at the vast terminal. They had just cleared immigration when Iamide tugged on her hand. "Yama, that Ajiasi is staring at us." Zainab looked up and felt time stop. Across the terminal, frozen in mid-stride, was Kang Min-sik. He looked older, she noted with detached observation. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 3 years ago, a certain weariness in his posture. He wore an expensive suit, as always, and he was staring at Iamide with an expression of absolute shock. Their eyes met across the crowded terminal, and Zainab saw the exact moment recognition and realization crashed into him. His gaze moved from her face to Iamide's, then back again. The boy was unmistakably his son. The resemblance was too strong to deny, too obvious to dismiss. Min-sik started walking toward them, weaving through travelers with single-minded focus. Zainab considered running, hiding, protecting her son from this moment. But she had known this confrontation was inevitable the moment she decided to return to Seoul. She stood her ground and waited. He stopped 3 feet away, breathing hard, his eyes never leaving Iamide's face. "Zainab," he said, his voice hoarse. "Is he?" "We're late for our car service," Zainab interrupted smoothly, her voice professionally cool. "Excuse us." She tried to move past him, but Min-sik stepped into her path. "Please. Just tell me. Is he mine?" Iamide looked up at the strange man blocking their path and said in perfect Korean, "Ajiasi, you're being rude to my Yama." The words hit Minsik like a physical blow. His son, speaking his language, defending his mother, having no idea he was addressing his father. "I'm sorry," he managed. "I didn't mean to be rude. I know you're Yama. We used to be friends." "Oh," Iamide said, his expression brightening. "Are you a good friend or a bad friend?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken history. If you're still watching, you incredible human, drop a comment and let me know what you think Minsik deserves. Does he deserve to know his son? And hit that subscribe button because this story gets even more intense. "That's complicated," Zainab answered for Minsik. She turned to her son. "Iamide, go sit on that bench for a moment. Yama needs to talk to this Ajiasi." Iamide obeyed, trotting over to a nearby bench and pulling out the toy car from his backpack. As soon as he was out of earshot, Minsik turned to Zainab with desperate eyes. "He's 3 years old," he said. Which means I was pregnant when I signed our divorce papers," Zainab confirmed calmly. "Yes. Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked. "How could you not tell me?" Zainab's calm facade cracked, revealing the rage beneath. "Tell you? Tell the man who called our marriage a mistake? Tell the family that paid a doctor to lie about my fertility so they'd have grounds to throw me out? Tell the mother-in-law who called me worthless because I couldn't produce an heir?" She laughed bitterly. "I did you a favor, Minsik. I left quietly, just like you wanted." "A doctor lied?" Minsik looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about?" "Dr. Park. Your mother's friend. The one who diagnosed me with damaged fallopian tubes that made pregnancy impossible. Except it was a lie. I got a second opinion in Lagos, and there's nothing wrong with me. The diagnosis was fabricated to make me feel defective and give you legal grounds for divorce based on infertility." Minsik's face went white. "My mother wouldn't. She couldn't." "She did. And you believed her. You believed I was broken, and you were relieved to be rid of me." Zainab's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "So forgive me if I didn't feel compelled to share the news that I was carrying your child. I wanted to protect my baby from people who measure human worth in bloodlines and business mergers." "Zainab, Minsik looked shattered. "I didn't know. If I had known you were pregnant, you would have what? Taken me back out of obligation? Fought your mother for custody? Or would you have offered me money to disappear quietly and give up my child?" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter now. Iamide is mine. You signed away all rights to me and anything connected to me 3 years ago. He's my son." Minsik's voice was fierce. "My blood. You can't just keep him from me. Watch me." Zainab signaled to Iamide, who came running back, and she lifted him into her arms. "We're leaving now." "Wait." Minsik pulled a business card from his wallet with shaking hands. "Please. Just think about it. He deserves to know his father. I deserve a chance to know my son. Whatever happened between us, he's innocent in all this." Zainab took the card without looking at it. "I'm in Seoul for business negotiations. With your company, actually. I'm sure we'll see each other at the contract meetings. We can discuss this then, professionally." "You're the consultant?" Minsik looked stunned. "The West African Vaccine Distribution Program?" "That's right. I own Adeyemi Global Consulting." Surprised that the barren African woman made something of herself, before he could respond, she walked away, carrying Iamide toward the exit where their driver was waiting. She could feel Minsik's eyes following them, could sense the weight of his shock and confusion and desperate need. In the car, Iamide nestled against her shoulder. "That Ajiasi looked sad," he observed. "Some people are sad because of choices they made," Zainab replied carefully. "Was he a bad friend to you, Yama?" "He made mistakes. Big mistakes. But I suppose he wasn't entirely bad." She kissed her son's forehead. "Don't worry about it, baby. Let's get to our hotel." But she knew this was just the beginning. Minsik had seen Iamide now. He knew he had a son. And men like Kang Minsik didn't accept being denied something they decided they wanted. The next 2 weeks were going to be a battle, and Zainab needed to be ready. The contract negotiations were held in the Kang Pharmaceuticals headquarters, a gleaming tower in Gangnam that screamed wealth and power. Zainab entered the building in a sharp emerald green suit that complemented her skin tone perfectly, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo, carrying herself with the confidence of a woman who had built a $50 million company from nothing. The conference room on the 42nd floor held a dozen people, lawyers, executives, government representatives from the West African Consortium. And at the head of the table, looking like he hadn't slept in days, sat Kang Min-sik. Their eyes met briefly, and she saw the raw emotion there, carefully controlled but visible to someone who had once known him intimately. She gave him a professional nod and took her seat directly across from him. "Shall we begin?" she said in flawless Korean. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Zainab was brilliant, presenting her firm's capabilities with precision and passion, fielding questions from skeptical executives with facts and projections, negotiating terms with strategic finesse. She had prepared for this contract for months, and it showed. Min-sik barely spoke during the meeting, letting his executives handle most of the discussion. But his eyes never left her face, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. This was not the distant, checked-out man who had ignored her in divorce court. This was someone fully present, fully focused, and clearly desperate. When the meeting finally concluded with an agreement to continue negotiations the following day, the room began to clear. Zainab gathered her materials, preparing to leave quickly before Min-sik could corner her. "Ms. Adeyemi," he said formally, using her maiden name. "May I have a word in private?" The remaining executives and lawyers glanced between them with barely concealed curiosity. Clearly, someone had already leaked the news that the African consultant was the CEO's ex-wife. "I have another appointment," Zainab said coolly. "Please. 5 minutes. It's important." She could refuse, but that would only delay the inevitable. 5 minutes, she agreed. When the room was empty, Min-sik closed the door and leaned against it, as if afraid she would bolt. "You were incredible in there," he said quietly. "The way you handled the questions about distribution logistics, the cultural sensitivity concerns, everything. You've built something remarkable." "Was there a point to this meeting, Mr. Kang?" She deliberately used his formal title. "Don't do that. Don't act like we're strangers. We are strangers. The man I married wouldn't have let his mother bribe a doctor to destroy me." Min-sik flinched. "I confronted her. Yesterday, after seeing you at the airport." She admitted it. His voice was hollow. "She paid Dr. Park a substantial sum to provide a diagnosis that would support divorce proceedings. She said it was necessary to protect our family's future." "And you're shocked?" Zainab asked incredulously. "You knew what she was capable of. You just chose to believe her instead of me." "You're right. I failed you in every way that mattered." Min-sik moved closer, his hands clenched at his sides as if physically restraining himself from reaching for her. "But Ayamide, he's innocent. He deserves to know his father. I'm begging you, Zainab. Give me a chance to be part of his life." "Why? So you can ignore him the way you ignored me? So your family can make him feel inferior for being half African?" "My family will never get near him if you don't want them to," Min-sik said fiercely. "I've already cut ties with my mother. After learning what she did, I removed her from the company board and told her she's not welcome in my life unless she offers you a genuine apology and changes entirely, which we both know she won't." Zainab studied his face, looking for deception and finding only desperate sincerity. "What about your wife? Yuna? How does she feel about your sudden interest in your illegitimate son?" "We're divorced." Min-sik's laugh was bitter. "It lasted 18 months. Turns out the fertility problem was never you, it was me. Severe male factor infertility. Low sperm count, poor motility. The doctors said natural conception was nearly impossible." He met her eyes. "Which means Ayamide is a miracle. The only biological child I'll ever have." The revelation stunned her. "You're infertile?" "Essentially, yes. The doctors estimated less than a 1% chance of natural conception. Ayamide was that 1%. His voice cracked. "When Yuna couldn't get pregnant either, I had to face the truth. I destroyed our marriage and accused you of being barren when I was the problem all along." Zainab felt a twisted satisfaction at the cosmic justice of it, followed immediately by guilt for feeling that way. "Yuna divorced you over it?" "No, I divorced her. When I realized the truth, I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies." She was relieved, honestly. "We never loved each other." It was just a business arrangement that my mother orchestrated. Minsik took another step closer. I've spent 3 years living with my mistakes, Zainab. Every day, I've regretted how I treated you. And now, knowing that I have a son, that you went through pregnancy and childbirth alone, that I've missed 3 years of his life. He stopped, overcome with emotion. That's not my problem, Zainab said, but her voice lacked conviction. I know. I have no right to ask anything from you. But I'm asking anyway. Let me meet him properly. Let me be his father. I'm not asking you to forgive me or take me back. I know that ship has sailed. But please, don't punish Ayamide because of my failures. The words hit home because they echoed her own fears. Was she keeping Ayamide from his father out of protection or revenge? Where was the line between those two things? I need time to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need. But while you're thinking, know this, I'm not going anywhere. I'll do whatever it takes, wait however long it takes. That's my son, and I'm going to fight for him. There was something different in Minsik's eyes now, something that had never been there during their marriage. Determination mixed with humility. He had finally lost enough to understand what truly mattered. The contract negotiations continue tomorrow, Zainab said, deliberately changing the subject. I expect professional behavior in that room. Of course. Business and personal will remain separate. You have my word. She nodded and turned toward the door, then paused. He asks about you sometimes. About his appa. He wants to know if he looks like you. Minsik's breath caught. What do you tell him? The truth. That he has his father's face and his mother's heart. She looked back at him over her shoulder. Don't make me regret letting you into his life, Minsik. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. If you hurt him, I won't. I swear on everything I have, I won't. Zainab left the building with her mind churning. She had come to Seoul for business, with a clear plan to keep her personal history separate from professional obligations. But nothing was going according to plan. Minsik wasn't the cold, distant man from divorce court. He was broken and humbled and genuinely desperate to know his son. Over the next 3 days, the contract negotiations continued. Zainab maintained her professional excellence, securing favorable terms for her consortium clients, while Kong Pharmaceuticals agreed to aggressive timelines and pricing structures. The contract, when finally signed, would be the largest pharmaceutical distribution deal in West African history. But parallel to the business discussions, Zainab found herself in deeper conversations with Minsik. They met for coffee before meetings, stayed late discussing not just business, but their lives over the past 3 years. Minsik told her about the emptiness of his marriage to Yuna, the devastating realization of his infertility, his mother's declining health and complete fall from grace within the family. She has cancer now, he said one evening as they reviewed contract amendments in his office. Stage 3. She's demanding to see her grandson before she dies. Absolutely not, Zainab said immediately. I told her the same thing. She doesn't deserve to meet Ayamide after what she did to you. Minsik leaned back in his chair, exhausted. She keeps saying she was protecting the family legacy. She can't understand that she destroyed it instead. Do you forgive her? Zainab asked curiously. No. Maybe someday, but not now. The anger is still too fresh. He looked at her intently. Do you forgive me? Zainab considered the question carefully. I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't a switch I can flip. It's a process, and I'm somewhere in the middle of it. That's more than I deserve. Probably, she agreed. Then, after a long silence, he wants to meet you. Ayamide. I told him about you, showed him pictures I still had on my old phone. He's very excited. Minsik's eyes filled with tears. Really? When? Tomorrow. We can meet at Han River Park. Neutral territory, casual. No pressure. Thank you. Minsik's voice was rough with emotion. Thank you for giving me this chance. The next afternoon, Zainab brought Ayamide to the Riverside Park where she and Minsik had once walked during their courtship. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her son wore his favorite shirt, the blue one that made his eyes stand out, and he held her hand tightly despite his excitement. Minsik was already there, sitting on a bench, looking more nervous than she had ever seen him. When he spotted them, he stood up slowly, as if afraid sudden movement would spook them. Iamide, Zainab said gently in Korean, "This is Kang Min-sik, your father." Iamide studied the man before him with solemn 3-year-old intensity. Then he said in Korean, "I do look like you." Grandpa was right. Min-sik laughed, a sound of pure joy mixed with tears. "You do. You look exactly like I did at your age. Your grandmother has pictures." "The mean one?" Iamide asked with childish bluntness. "Yes, the mean one. You don't have to meet her if you don't want to." "Good. I only want nice grandmas." Iamide considered this, then added, "You made my Yama sad. She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping." The accusation hit Min-sik visibly. He knelt down to Iamide's level. "I did. I made very big mistakes, and I'm sorry. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to both of you, if you'll let me." "Can you play soccer?" Iamide asked, the attention span of a 3-year-old moving on to more important topics. "I can try," Min-sik said, smiling through tears. Zainab watched father and son kick a ball back and forth on the grass, watched Iamide's delighted laughter as Min-sik deliberately missed easy shots, watched the pure love and wonder on Min-sik's face as he interacted with the child he had never known existed. And she felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of it. Over the following weeks, a new routine emerged. The contract was signed with great fanfare, establishing Zainab's company as the premier facilitator of Asian-African pharmaceutical partnerships. But more importantly, Min-sik became a consistent presence in Iamide's life. Supervised visits at first, then longer outings, then eventually overnight stays at Min-sik's penthouse, which he had completely child-proofed. Zainab watched carefully for any sign that Min-sik would revert to his old patterns, that work would take priority over his son, that he would start making promises he couldn't keep. But Min-sik had fundamentally changed. He left meetings early to pick Iamide up from daycare. He turned down business trips that would keep him away for more than a day. He learned to braid hair when Iamide asked him to practice on his stuffed animals. "You're a good father," Zainab admitted one evening when Min-sik brought Iamide back from a museum visit. Their son was asleep in his arms, exhausted from a day of exploration. "I'm trying to be," Min-sik said quietly, carefully transferring Iamide to his bed. "I have a lot of lost time to make up for." They stood together in the doorway of Iamide's room, watching him sleep, and Zainab felt the weight of 3 years of anger and hurt begin to lighten. Not disappear, but lighten. "I need to go back to Lagos next week," she said. "The business needs me there." "I know." Min-sik's voice was carefully neutral. "What about Iamide?" "He comes with me. That's his home." "Can I visit?" "I'll come every month, stay for a week. I'll work remotely. Whatever it takes to be part of his life." Zainab studied his face, seeing the sincerity there. "Yes, you can visit. But Min-sik, understand this. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Iamide. He deserves to know his father, to have you in his life. But don't mistake my cooperation for forgiveness of what you put me through." "I understand." "And Zainab? For what it's worth, I am sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." "Yes," she agreed simply. "I did." 3 years later, Iamide stood at the entrance of Seoul International School, a confident 6-year-old in his new uniform, fluent in 4 languages now. Behind him, Zainab stood next to Min-sik, the two of them united in parenthood, if not in marriage. Zainab had remarried a year ago, a Nigerian diplomat named Chiwetel who loved Iamide as his own and understood the complexities of her relationship with Min-sik. Min-sik had remained single, dedicating himself to his son and to reforming Korean attitudes toward multiracial families through his considerable platform and influence. Mrs. Kang had passed away 18 months ago, never having met her grandson. She had sent letters begging for reconciliation, but Zainab had returned them unopened. Some hurts ran too deep for deathbed forgiveness. "Yama, Appa," Iamide said, using both titles naturally now. "Fighting." It was the Korean phrase for encouragement, "You can do it," and it perfectly captured the spirit of their unusual family. "Fighting," they both responded, watching him run toward his new classroom, fearless and loved. Min-sik turned to Zainab. "Thank you for giving me this chance. for being bigger than my mistakes. I didn't do it for you, she reminded him. I did it for him. I know. But still, thank you. As they walked back to their separate cars, Zainab reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had come to that family court 3.5 years ago believing she was broken, believing she had lost everything. Instead, she had gained everything that truly mattered: her son, her success, her dignity, and, ultimately, a form of peace. Minsik had lost his empire of indifference and gained something far more valuable: a son who called him Appa and meant it. Some stories don't end with romantic reconciliation. Some stories end with two people who hurt each other learning to coexist peacefully for the sake of the child they both love. Some stories end with a woman who is called Barren raising the most extraordinary child, proving that her worth was never determined by anyone's opinion of her. And sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply living well. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button because we have more incredible stories coming your way. Drop a comment telling me what you think about Zainab's journey, and smash that like button if you believe she made the right choices. Remember, the best way to prove people wrong is to succeed despite them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.